Okay. I think why don't we go ahead and get started this afternoon. Again, thanks to everybody that has taken the time to join us. Really appreciate that. Looking forward to spending some time with you and the team, and in a kind of a strange time in the world where we're not able to get together. I think our preference would obviously be, if those of you that know kind of where we are in Norwood, Massachusetts, we're a couple units down from Percival Brewing, so we'd much rather have this conversation in person at Percival. But glad we could do it in this format. It seems like there was a lot of interest, and really happy with the number of people that chose to be part of it. So glad to have you. Hopefully, we can provide some content that's interesting and useful to you, and something we'll do again for sure. So I'm going to go through just a few things to kind of get started, and a little bit about laying the groundwork of what we're going to do today. And then we'll just jump in to a panel discussion, and I'll introduce the panelists as well. Real informal, I think the idea is we are hoping that we can have kind of a virtual conversation with you this afternoon. So there is a Q&A section that you can send questions if you have as we go through this. I'll kind of keep an eye on that, and that way, if there's some things that I don't ask the panelists that you're interested in, just go ahead and shoot a note to the Q&A, and we'll be happy to address that. With that, unfortunately, I'd love to give you some swag as if we were here in person, but since we're not, making you aware, so we came out with some good laptop art. If any of you are interested in some PTP laptop art being sent to you while we're kind of sequestered, reach out to either send a note to marketing via the registration links or your account manager, and happy to send some stuff to you. So kind of enjoy the branding and some of the fun stuff, and in the meantime, while we're not able to get together. So the team that we've got assembled for this afternoon. So myself, I'm Gary Derheim, Vice President of Managed Services and Marketing for PTP, actually based in Dallas. So the home office is not a new thing to me, but it's a new thing to be obviously connecting with everybody else doing the same thing. So it is a happy hour event. I'm enjoying a craft brew. Mine is from Tupp's Brewery, which is in McKinney, about 15 miles or so east of where I am in North Texas area. And so this is it's a juice pack. It's a double dry hopped pale ale. It's kind of that perfect combination of some flavor and dryness. So again, if we were at Percival or somewhere else, love to be able to buy you a drink. But hopefully you're enjoying something that you enjoy, whether it's a beer, a glass of wine, a cocktail, water, soda, whatever. The panelist team, I'll go ahead just kind of for ease of introductions and smoothness. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce everybody, and then allow themselves to share a little bit more as we go through the Q&A. So Ethan Simmons is our managing partner. He calls himself the chief bottle washer, but he does that and so many things for us. So we certainly appreciate that, and thanks, Ethan, for joining this afternoon. Rick Pitcairn out of Cincinnati, Ohio, is our director of the Managed Services organization. So Rick and I are on the same team, and he's responsible for all things around infrastructure, cloud operations, and our 24/7 managed services. Steve Hubenar, also out of Cincinnati, leads our managed security services. So some of the things that we'll talk about this afternoon as it relates to not just the cost optimization piece, but how we're helping secure cloud environments falls under Steve's jurisdiction. And then Aaron Jeske, Senior Cloud Architect for PTP. I'm sure many of those of you that are on the call have had an opportunity to meet with Aaron. And then Bill Amsbob, a Cloud Architect for us, also brings a great deal of life sciences expertise to the table. So happy to have the team involved. Before we get into the panel discussion, I just wanted to share a little bit of a setup in terms of what PTP is trying to do and kind of our approach as we're working through the ongoing discipline and governance around cost optimization. So the tools that we leverage, and we'll probably talk a lot about them today, and I'll leave some of that to certainly our panelists, the experts, to talk a little bit more about. But part of what we're trying to show our customers is, hey, here's trends around your spend, here's trends around the opportunity for cost savings, and then also be able to show you kind of from an aggregate level how you compare against PTP's overall customer base. And so we're going to give you data kind of like what you're looking at here. It says, hey, over the last few months, PTP's aggregate customer base had a savings opportunity of, say, 30% or 23% or 24%, and then kind of compare your savings and your opportunity with the customer base and try to identify if you're more or less optimized and what kind of things we can do to help you ensure that you've got an environment that's meeting all the performance and capacity needs, but also has the cost control that's so critical for the CFO. And kind of another look would be, if you were a customer of PTP, then, we're going to show you again, hey, here's where your spend has been over, the past 6 months. Here's what your cost savings are. So the orange line would be, say, a theoretical customer spend. The gray would be the theoretical cost savings, and then how they're trending. And the discipline really that we're trying to apply to this is help you make decisions on an ongoing basis to drive that further and further down. So a lot of the context in the discussion that we're going to have today is a combination of, the secret sauce from the tools that we use to make this happen, and obviously the experts that are using those tools to make those decisions, to make the recommendations, and then see that through with our customers. So just kind of wanted to preempt the conversation with a little bit of a review there first. With that, I think we'll jump into the panel discussion. And again, I encourage to try to keep it as informal and conversational as possible. So to the panelists talking to you, not necessarily the attendees right now. I'll try to do our best for the attendees just to make sure that you're off mute when kind of we go to you, just to keep it as smooth as possible. And then, hey, feel free to kind of introduce yourself a little bit more than what I did, and if you've got a beverage of choice you want to share with the group, I'm sure that they'd be interested to know what you're rolling with. So I think we'll start with, kind of probably some broader conversations and really focusing on cost. And so, this one I'll kind of go out, probably a combination, Aaron, to you and to Ethan. So when we're building out a new environment, obviously, from an architectural perspective, we're focused on the well-architected framework and ensuring that what we're building out meets the standards and the best practices that are set forth by AWS. But can you talk just a little bit about some of the major key considerations for deploying that as cost effectively as possible? So ensuring we're meeting kind of the best practices, but what kind of things would we be looking to do to kind of minimize the expense to our customers?
Thanks, Gary. Well, I'm drinking a lightly warm Founders All Day IPA. Waiting for one to get a little cold for me in the fridge, but I'll deal with this for now.
Nice.
What are you drinking, Ethan?
Yeah, I have to go into the Meraki. I found a use for this Meraki fridge. See, now I have a Treehouse Sap, so I'm
nice choice.
Decent little beer to have.
Representing Charlton.
If you don't know about Treehouse in Charlton, Mass. Nice little place to go visit.
Yeah, it's a nice little place as long as you don't live in the area and drive down Route 20 with all the people trying to get their 4 beers that they're allotted a year coming out of that parking lot. But to Gary, thanks for the question. we've been focusing quite a lot on using tools like Instance Scheduler, which we've gotten really heavy into deploying these last month and a half or so. But tools like that, so Amazon has a tool called Instance Scheduler that will help you tag and deploy instances, and when you tag the instance, it will automatically follow a certain schedule that you've applied. So that's one tool that Amazon's really started to get heavy into pushing. They just had a big update a few weeks ago to start rolling that out as part of your well-architected framework, using that landing zone and defining, having many of the folks that are customers already have heard me say before, but we really go for that application isolation. We try to focus as much as we can on having one business application, one group, one user using one account. So when you deploy the landing zone or the control tower, you're going to have an AWS operations account. That AWS operations account will have a service like Instance Scheduler running in there. And what happens there is you tag all your EC2 instances, be they reserved, or well, you don't have to really do reserved, spot, or on demand. And you put a schedule on it saying this is a business operations, this is an overnight, this is a every third Saturday of the month instance, and you really start to manage with that. So that's an AWS specific tool that's really starting to grow. And if you were talking to Amazon, that's what they're going to be pushing. However, we've had tools around for a lot longer than just like I said, this last month and a half of really pushing this tool. We use Cloud Checker to constantly set up budgets to help analyze your spend. And I understand that their customers are out there. If you're heavy into AWS, you might be saying, "Hey, look, what about Cost Explorer and cost budgets?" Those are great when you're in a single account. So Amazon does provide facilities to manage a fleet across multiple accounts, but you have to be really proactive about tagging and managing your instances, setting up your schedules, and making sure that everything is that has that tag on deploy, or it doesn't work. But the Cloud Checker approach, we kind of try to abstract out from that and say, hey, let's look at all the accounts. We set up those multi-account views. If you're familiar with Cloud Checker, you can go in and have all of your billing consolidated into one reporting area where you can then have budgets set. And you can use tagging again, so you can tag all your instances, not just your EC2 instances to make sure they're turned down, but you could also have ALBs, NLBs, EFS volumes, anything that you want could be tagged in there for tracking to your budget. So what we will traditionally do is set work with a business partner and say, hey, tell us what you want your average run rate per month to be. We figure out the daily run rate, and then we'll set up alerts that can trigger on 1% change. If you have a really static environment, you should you might want to be notified on 1% change in your budget. Or maybe customer earlier or late last week had an enormous spend of tens of thousands of dollars because somebody got a little itchy with their deploy finger and ended up deploying 1,600 instances when they only meant to finally deploy like 300. So with that, we monitor that Cloud Checker across all the accounts, set the budget for those things that are tagged, and notify you on a major change. So the two different approaches, one, the very Amazon-centric, well-architected review, what are you doing, would be the control tower with Instance Scheduler, lots of tagging, manage your instances that way, use Cost Explorer to set some budgets. Again, there's some inherent issues in there. Or how PTP takes the approach to it is to go up one layer, look across the entire environment, and set budgets clearly across all your accounts.
Oh, that's great. Appreciate that. That was a really good overview. So maybe let's go even from there, a step up. Now we're looking at kind of cost optimization as a whole before we kind of drill into some other areas. Maybe if you could just describe for the audience the main areas that you see for excess spend and where the biggest opportunities are for cost optimization kind of across the board with the customer base that you've seen.
So two major things, and then I'll go into some a few minor ones after that. But the two major things are EC2 instances, on-demand EC2 instances that are way over provisioned, or not even qualified in the right instance class. So you have to remember, there's a huge matrix of all the different instance types that you can be running, either CPU count, network throughput, memory. There's a few of the variables that everybody's been used to since data center days that, but you really need to go through and almost like you were provisioning a physical host in the legacy and infrastructure days, where you maybe, you don't have to be as detailed. You're not necessarily worrying about what speed PCIe X bus am I running? Am I running 32X? And do I have enough, physical configuration of that board? But you still have to go and look at all those instance types. So finding the right instance is something that can help you quite a bit. And then also knowing when you're actually using all that. I can't count the number of times I've seen it either here at PTP or in previous iterations of my career. That you get somebody out there that says, hey, I just give me a 64 core, 256 gig RAM of server because I can get it, and they're not thinking in that way of, well, if you need that, let's turn on CloudWatch advanced monitoring, so you can get really high resolution, high accuracy detail of your monitoring, meaning CPU and memory and network throughput. Turn on that. It's a few extra dollars, if that, a month on an individual server. Turn those on, set the monitoring to actually see when you're getting to the threshold. Again, many of the customers here have heard me say before, the cloud is about running at redline, because it is a click or two away from having a small instance to a large instance, or the inverse. If you find that you don't need that 64 gigs and 256 gig of RAM, I think it's 3 clicks, and you resize the instance. Sure, there's a downtime associated with it, and you have to have appropriate change control in there. But for the cost savings aspect of it, it's a relatively lightweight task to take on. And we just so the other major thing. So that's a quick recap on that is getting an appropriate instance for the scale, meaning CPU cores versus memory, and then making sure you're actually using those things and scaling around appropriately. So that's task one, and that's, again, those are things that are available through CloudWatch, Advanced Metrics, and again through our the Cloud Checker platform that we use. We can see a lot of these things. The next thing that I see more and more, and as PTP is life science partners with Amazon, we're definitely picking up a lot more business in that area. Bioinformaticians are scientists. They are not technologists. They didn't, I don't know if we have anybody on here that represents that specific area, but they need engineers to go and educate them on what the system's capabilities are. We had a customer earlier this week that Rick's team was working on that said, hey, I need 500 gigabytes of EBS for my fleet of 30 machines. I said, okay, well, how big is your data set you're starting with? 20 gigabytes. Okay, how much does it grow? Maybe a gigabyte or two. Then why do you want 500 gigabytes? That's an additional $45 of cost a month per instance. Well, because I don't know if I'll ever need it. And again,
it's like people are bringing some of their old traditional data center rules with capacity, and I need a CPU no higher than 70% and excess capacity. They're bringing that type of mentality to the cloud with them.
Absolutely. And so with this particular pharmaceutical company, we educated the customer and said, look, it is quite literally 2 clicks and type in a number to grow your volume, and then 1 command on your operating system to start using that space. And it's so simple at this point that, again, if you turn on those CloudWatch advanced metrics, yes, it is an additional cost, but you spend a little to save a lot. You can hook that to a Lambda function that will automatically go in and grow that by increments of 5 gigabytes. I remember I worked for a life insurance company in mid 2000s, and we went off and bought this big Exchange server back when you hosted Exchange. And my boss there, Rick, said, hey, make sure you put a whole bunch of pig files on there. I'm like, what are pig files? They're 10 gigabyte, all 0 files that you put in the root of every file system that you make, just so that you can look like a hero when you go and delete it and give up the space. It's like, oh, the Exchange server is almost full. Oh, go delete a pig file. And you look like the hero. You haven't had to do anything. But in the Amazon world, you don't need to take on these manipulations to how you're presenting to the business. The reality is you can get those resources very, very quickly. So Gary, this is top 2 for you. I can go into a few more if you want, or if you've got a different topic, let's go.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think we'll come back to probably some more detail, but I think just the fundamentals. It's interesting how, as complex as some of the technology is, some of the issues are related just with traditional practices that have been part of people's behavior for so long. maintaining, physical infrastructure and decisions that were made there and just carrying that forward. So that's really interesting to hear. So maybe Ethan, now just kind of shift a little bit to you, a little away from the cost optimization piece, but more in just the ecosystem itself. So, obviously we've talked a little bit about, AWS as a cloud provider and some of the things that we're doing and we can see with CloudCheckr. What are some of the other third-party tools that, or systems or ecosystem partners that you're seeing out there that are providing a lot of value to some of our customers today to kind of bolt on with the solutions that we're delivering?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's always interesting that when we talk to, we host a lot of the AWS meetups and sponsor those. And I remember, a couple of years ago, we did one and we were presenting on some third-party tools, and a bunch of people came up to us after and said, I didn't even know there was third-party tools. I thought AWS made everything. Why would I not use an AWS tool, or why would I use a third-party tool? So, the reality is that AWS makes a boatload of tools, and they're great if you have a lot of engineering team and time to look at the logs and do something with and react to the data. What we're trying to bring to the table are tool sets that are automating some of that, reducing your staff costs, reducing your overhead costs, letting you focus on innovating rather than trying to read CloudWatch logs or security logs. So we work with a lot of different tool sets out there. It depends on the customer needs. We've mentioned CloudCheckr, great tool for doing cloud optimization, security, best practices. We use that with our customers every day. We're also seeing a lot of customers as they're growing their AWS footprint. They need connections to other third-party services or need to share data. They need to, especially in life sciences, where they may have research data from. A good example is the Broad Institute releases a lot of their applications on GCP, on Google first. Most of our customers have their data in AWS, so they're looking for ways to easily route traffic from GCP to AWS and then back again as they move data sets around. So there's a tool or a service called Aviatrix that does a lot of multi-cloud routing. So we have a team of Cisco engineer, they were Cisco CCIE level engineers, and they've slowly been morphing over time to cloud networking architects. We're seeing a huge demand for people with different connectivity needs. So Aviatrix is a customer that we work with. I think one of the legacy customers that are out there that we work with a lot that people aren't realizing as a cloud player is Cisco. So we're doing a project now for a customer that's looking to move. They got to get out of a physical data center. They got to move to the cloud, and they have, a couple hundred VPN connections to some old firewalls sitting in their data center, and they need to move those VPNs from there to the cloud. So, help that customer deploy virtual ASAV in the cloud. So I think, that's just two: Aviatrix, Cisco, CloudCheckr, 3. There's a bunch of them out there, but I think for us, it's bringing, the right solution set based on the customer need, based on the problem, and finding the right solution that makes it easy to manage, gives customers the visibility that they need, and makes it, and also does it in a cost-effective way.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's good. It's interesting to see how many different companies are coming up with different obviously services and capabilities and products, and how our industry is always evolving, and larger companies are buying some other companies' products, et cetera. But yeah, like you said, I think our job is to help kind of match customer need and unique circumstances with probably the best possible solution. So that's great.
And hey, Gary, this is Bill real quick. I just wanted to follow on to something Ethan said about CloudCheckr. I've been using that actually a lot on the Microsoft Azure front. It doesn't get as much press as a lot of the AWS side, but I've actually run this a couple of times for some clients, and along with the right sizing features that a lot of people are very familiar with CloudCheckr, which are fantastic, reserved instances, save you a lot of money, scaling down to things to redline it, like Aaron said, those are great. A lot of things that I've seen on the Azure side are a little bit different. For example, if you delete a virtual machine, it doesn't actually delete all the resources in the group that is there. So you sometimes get orphan disks, and these things can cost you for each VM, maybe $100, $200, depending on the size of the disk, and virtual networks that are hanging around as well. So there's one other component where SQL Server database is pretty expensive. And I scanned one just the other day, and someone had taken basically snapshots of the database and had dumps, and each instance was costing $75, and they had 75 of them. So you can kind of do the math and see over a course of a year, these things can kind of add up and cost you a lot. So I just wanted to point that little cloud checker as well. And I was going with the vodka soda water just to be refreshing. And I do have a quick conflict, so I have to kind of jump, but I wanted to add that in. And thank you, Gary.
Yeah. You have time for one more question or two?
Yep.
So let me come to you with, so Aaron mentioned our life sciences competency with AWS. Obviously, it's proud of that. It's a big accomplishment for the organization. Obviously, aligns well with our focus. You clearly have got a great amount of experience in the biotechnology space. Can you talk to us just a little bit about the kind of the high points on how companies in that vertical space, the life sciences space, the uniqueness in terms of how they're leveraging the cloud, or just kind of the demands that they have in terms of compute, at least in the early to mid stages, perhaps?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. It's a very interesting question. I've been in the industry for quite a long time, like over 20 years, and so I've got to watch it evolve. And it's some parts of it are a little bit partitioned, and by that I mean you get physical lab users, and so they're thinking of the world as I've got this lab instrument, and you got a physical sample in your hand, and to kind of think of the cloud, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, because you're producing lab data locally. So being able to actually reconstruct and re-architect that such that you can combine tools such as AWS Gateway, and maybe Aaron can talk more about that as I drop. But this is becoming kind of a hot commodity because it allows you to have the best of both worlds. Some of the stuff that Ethan was talking about and Aaron before, you can actually drop an appliance in their data center and just have a small footprint with local storage, so you have fast read-write on this. So the scientists who are really concerned about losing their precious sample data because of a network blip or something going down, or just fears of the cloud having a thunderstorm or something like that, having that local presence, they can map, SMB share and basically just treat it as if they're writing it to the data room, and Amazon will take care of teleporting that up to the cloud. And so if they do need to do analysis locally, it could be high throughput sequencing of DNA, or it could be high content imaging. They can actually do their analysis against a local share, which they love to feel that they can do that for performance reasons, or they can allow it to stream up to the cloud, and then we can set up, RDP sessions so that they can actually still be working locally, but in the cloud. They'll RDP into the box and then have an S3 bucket to do analysis against. So that new paradigm shift, I think, has been starting to really get a lot of traction, and it kind of solves a lot of those variables. So that's been the biggest thing that I've noticed recently is that paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like a lot of the general elements that we look at as value for cloud, time to market, how quickly can you turn up resources, business continuity, things of that nature are consistent with the customers in the life sciences space. It's just a matter of taking very unique applications and those unique application workloads and kind of getting them connected. Is that fair to say?
I think it is. And a lot of times folks cite, HIPAA regulations and things like that. SSAE 16, SOC 1 and 2, AWS has those certifications. So, the compliance has been something that people have been concerned about. And I think those have been largely put to rest by the tightenings of standards and the ability to keep that under tight control with things that Aaron mentioned, such as landing zone control tower. So it's not only just cost, but it's more of a security and governance aspect as well that makes IT folks feel a lot more comfortable with it now.
Gotcha. That's great. Thanks, Bill. So I think we'll switch gears. Want to give everybody a chance to kind of take a deep breath before I come back to you. So Rick, I'm going to come to you. So leading the day-to-day operations of the Peak Plus Managed Services organization. Talk a little bit about just the kind of the discipline and the process of the data analysis that we get back from CloudCheckr and the other tools that we're using, and how we can use that to impact spend, if you would.
Yeah, so I definitely think that the discipline is key. I guess my drink is Jack and Coke. I am drinking it out of a Cincinnati Red glass.
Number one fan.
So being a Boston-based company,
that's why you're drinking Jack and Coke.
Yeah, I don't know how many Reds fans we have, or Cincinnati sports fans we have on the call being Boston-based, but as a Reds fan, this was going to be our year, and of course, the pandemic hits, and now we're just sitting here without baseball or Cincinnati sports. So nothing to be frustrated about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing with my time. But no, really that discipline is key. I think you can have the right platform that you have in place and you can be capturing all the right data, but how you're utilizing that data to make informed IT decisions, not just from a technological perspective, but how we're sharing that data and adding value back to the business, I think that becomes really critical. What we're seeing from our side is weekly, monthly cadence are happening where we're taking that data, we're reviewing the consolidated trends and possible areas for savings and efficiency, and we can take that data, roll it into incremental changes, right? So we're not trying to make one large brush of changes, we're condensing them into smaller changes and hopefully to mitigate the risk. By taking that, what we're looking for is really underutilized, over-architected workloads, idle resources, instance savings, whether it makes sense to move from on-demand instances to reserved instances, or can certain applications run on lesser class, servers. So really what we're seeing is you formulate all of that into best practice from a security infrastructure perspective, and really you can present those recommendations back to the business and show them where you're really saving. Yeah, no, I hear you, and obviously I'm big proponent in that kind of consistency, and it's one thing to be able to do an assessment of an environment and kind of take a one-time snap and look, and as we know with the CloudCheckr tools that we leverage and many of our customers and some that are on the call today have used, you've got the functions, the snapback functions that allow you to look at a particular period of time, kind of a point in time, way back or right now. So that's really valuable. But because things change consistently, because it's a dynamic environment, just staying on top of that obviously is, before things kind of get out of control, seems to be where we're experiencing the most value. So that's good stuff. And Steve, I haven't come to you yet, so you're next on the hot seat. So
the problem is being kind of towards the end is that you've really kind of wasted that drink, but the speech will come freely now. So I am drinking, this is whiskey, honey, and lemon. So it's kind of a bee's knees. Bee's knees is normally a gin drink, but we're right on the border in Kentucky. So we're going to throw some bourbon in there instead. So,
nice.
Yeah, that was a double. I'm pretty low. So let's go. What do you got?
Is that honey produced in your own beehive yet, or are you not yet producing?
This year, we're hoping to get some honey out of those beehives, but this is locally sourced honey. That's when you get all the good pollen to get rid of those allergies and all that stuff, but not mine yet. Soon. This year for sure. Everyone on this, I'm sure everyone will get a bottle if everything's successful. That's the Christmas gift to the PTP staff. So.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. So you're the mean security guy. You want to lock us all down and keep anybody from having fun or doing anything interesting.
What I do.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the areas you see most often where customers are not applying best practices around cloud security. I know that's kind of macro, but just kind of as a starting point, you've had the opportunity to work with myself and Rick and Aaron as we're putting together the Peak Plus control reporting around the customer environments. What are some of the big areas that you're seeing that seem to be kind of underserved?
So what's interesting is, and Aaron mentioned it earlier, that when they move to the cloud, they follow a lot of their traditional practices. But what I find is that what everybody wants to do is abandon the kind of traditional security practices, though. I mean, that stuff that makes it not fun to be a developer, or not fun to be in that kind of new wild west world of the cloud is dropped. So you're going to see a lot of problems with identification and authentication controls. What I'll call cloud stuff, which really kind of wraps around encryption and some SNS stuff, and then some network stuff as well. So under identification and authentication controls, you're going to see no user policies, no role policies. Everyone's going to be set to be an admin. That's not good. You're going to see just basic stuff that you're used to seeing: passwords expiring, complex passwords not being in place, programmatic access keys given out to everyone instead of just the developers that need them. So you'll see, people that just have console access having programmatic keys. These are all holes for the bad guys to kind of utilize to get into your environment. As far as cloud stuff, S3 encryption, we talk about, I think people encrypt data. Big companies encrypt data on their laptops at this point. But you go out into the cloud and you're not using encryption on an S3 bucket where somebody can, you're protecting against a disgruntled AWS employee that can walk off with a drive. Now, I know that's not supposed to happen, but if you talk to Capital One, maybe they would differ with you when they lost 100 million, credit card information to a disgruntled AWS employee. AWS does a great job locking down their systems, but I think we're all in that situation where these things can go awry with a person that has too much access. Or so you want to make sure that you're defending against that by having just a simple checkbox of getting that encryption there. As far as under network stuff, you're seeing VPC security groups, and you're seeing network ACLs that are allowing all traffic. And I asked myself, why is this happening? My theory is that everyone just thinks, oh, well, Amazon's taking care of that. And I think if anyone goes out and does any Amazon training, the first thing they'll tell you is, we are going to take care of our operating systems. We're going to physically secure your servers. You are still in charge of your data. So those kind of things need to be realized. That just like the traditional, it's funny, the traditional how you set up your environment should not move over, but the traditional of how you secure your environment should.
Yeah, so it's back to the simple Amazon, if we're talking AWS, the separation of the security in the cloud and the security of the cloud piece and what you're responsible for. And so I think, what I'm hearing is all the resources are available to be able to do the things that you'd want to do at a best practice level. It's just a matter of executing those and staying consistent and having the oversight to ensure that they're being done. Is that fair?
Yes, IAM has all the policy, user authentication, and all the rule sets that you need to get that stuff done. You can set ACLs. You can use the VPC security groups to set the security that you need. It's all out there. We just need to utilize it.
Mm-hmm. So that was great, and that was a lot of things that I think obviously all of us need to be thinking about. So similar question back to you, Steve, but along the same topic. So there's obviously some low-hanging fruit there when. Because you and I have had this discussion with our vulnerability management services. So we're providing vulnerability management and scanning of customer environments and reporting back to them. And frankly, we have customers that the score doesn't change very often, but it's not a great score. And it's hey, I'm really busy and I've got other things to do. So I can't keep servers patched, or I can't update configurations, things like that. So kind of along those same lines, for when we see some of these security holes, but we know, customers have a certain amount of budget and not enough time, what's some of the low-hanging fruit out there that you would go to have kind of the biggest impact from a security posture perspective with the least amount of cost or time resource?
Yeah, so these are not going to be in order. I want to say that first because they kind of intermingle with each other. So the first thing I would do is look at a least privilege model. You really need to limit what people have access, make sure they only have access to things that they need to do their job. That's people, that's systems within AWS, programmatic systems as well. So you want to make sure that you have a good, first of all, policy in place, and then go through and actually set those passwords to expire, set those complex passwords to go. Limit the amount of the amount of people that have admin privileges. Lock away the root account. Do you need the root account? Is there a small group that needs the root account? Let's put that, change the password, put it in an envelope, keep it in a safe. That's old traditional security stuff that applies today. On top of that, that protects against, if you have passwords compromised or user accounts compromised by phishing attacks or just carelessness, that MFA will protect against that as well. So if you add multi-factor on top of those kind of things, you're going to be able to protect against that. It's not going to protect, MFA alone will not protect against a compromised user account. Well, as I was talking before, employees that I think I was reading an article the other day that 95% of employees steal from the company. So everybody here is like, well, how many people are on the call? Anyway, that's either time or that's office supplies or that's whatever. 45% steal services from the company. So you need to protect. The reason you don't just solely rely on MFA is that you need to protect yourself against employees as well. That's why I say MFA is a big piece, but also you have to have password policies. You have to have the ability that passwords change. You have to have the ability to kill an account if you need to. So a lot of this stuff is just kind of standard security policies, but a good identification, authentication, control policy is something that you really need to look into. Look into least privilege. Make sure no one has access. When it comes to network, make sure that you know what's on your network. What you allow into the network, you should know. You should know what ports they need. You should know what IP addresses they should access. So make sure that you're locking down network ACLs and VPC security groups. And what can happen is if I have a system that has access to everything, all a bad guy needs to do is compromise that system. Then they can laterally move throughout my organization without any consequence. So we really need to start looking at, like I said, locking down that sort of, know what's on your network. The common practice would be lock it down and then let it in as you need it. And then turn on encryption. It's a checkbox. If you have a problem with encryption, if you think that Amazon's got it all under control, they mostly do. But if someone walks off with a drive and it's not encrypted, they have access to your data. And then my last thing is inspect. So if you have to have a system with checks and balances. We do it with Cloud Checker today. So, you're going to want to have something that when you put all these policies in place and you start, you put MFA and you put your user password policies and you put a limited amount of admins in place, you need to inspect that to make sure that's being followed. So that's where something like a Cloud Checker comes in, or as Aaron said, there's Amazon tools as well, but something that will say, okay, I have all this all in place, trust but inspect.
Oh, that's great. Appreciate that. No, that's good stuff. I think, again, nobody can deliver. There's no such thing as a perfect level of security, but it's that funnel and the spend and the resource that has the biggest impact. So I think that's really helpful.
Hey, Gary, I'm not trying to get in the way of your questions, but just to add on to that, I think what we see a lot from an operations side is the environment's secure, but the users aren't educated, so they aren't sure what is a phishing email, what links to click on or not to click on. So I think low cost would be educating your end users on security and general security best practices, because we see a lot of environments that are very, very secure, but a user, clicks on a bad email, and then next thing you know, that's working its way through the organization. So, that's a big focus, I think, is making sure your users are educated on security practices to some degree.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. And that's a challenge with, larger organizations that have higher turnover and just staying on top of that. We've got some ideas and solutions for that as well. I'm going to shift back, Aaron, back to you. So earlier you got into a little bit our discussion around the right sizing piece. So, and I think you talked about it, but I just want to make sure that we kind of cover it in completion before we close. And just what are the considerations that admins need to take into consideration as, like, hey, we're going to come to you with the ability to maybe reduce the size, so we're paying a little bit less per resource, or you're not, but what do we want to make sure is in play before we do that, just so that we don't affect performance of information in the environment?
So what's the tooling that we'd want to see in place before we start to execute on any cost savings plans?
Yeah, I think particularly like with the right sizing. So, how do we get to that? How do we get to that smallest possible size and cost without compromising performance? I think is really what I'm trying to get to. And how do we make sure we arm administrators or ourselves, if we're doing that on our customers' behalf, to get the cost out, but not negatively affect performance?
Understood. Yeah, as I mentioned, earlier about the advanced monitoring aspect of CloudWatch, we turn on those features, or you start to deploy a tool. And I can't believe I'm still talking about this tool because I hated it for about a decade. But tools like SolarWinds, deploying those things and getting that high resolution, high accuracy of what your servers are doing on a daily basis. Remember, Amazon doesn't report on real strong metrics for compute and memory in CloudWatch out of the gate for a reason. They make you pay a little extra to have those services, or you have to go get a third-party tool, either be SolarWinds or looking at heat map tools in Cloud Checker. Getting in there and finding out what you're actually operating. Back in the day when 2005, when you really started to roll out VMware for the very first time, you were having to measure every single VMware instance and trying to allocate the appropriate resources for them. So that has not changed. However, how you go about monitoring it has changed, and some of those things have become hidden behind a black box with advanced monitoring or whatever you want to, whatever aspects you want to go and trend on those. But getting that tooling in place first is an absolute key to being able to make those decisions. And then again, getting to know that matrix of instance types really can help start to drive down those costs, because you might have a CPU intensive task or a memory intensive task, or sometimes GPU intensive, and those GPU machines get real expensive real fast. But is your GPU application actually capable of taking on a multi-threaded approach? Can it truly be distributed across it? So knowing your application, that has not changed again, but how you map those resources and the available types of instances that you have available to you, that has changed. So you may not be measuring as much as you used to, but I think it puts more weight in those buckets of knowing how your application works and knowing how you can actually improve in those areas. And then from there, you can start to, after you know how well it's you know how much the resources the thing actually uses, you have it on the right size instance. And now then unfortunately you get into a business, more of a business role here, with understanding what, on a project management side of things, how long your customers meaning your company, are going to be using those services. This means things like, looking at cost savings plans or reserved instances. That's, cost savings plans. If people here aren't aware of it, it's only been around for a few months. In the traditional way of buying reserved instances from Amazon was, I want this specific instance type in this region, and maybe I'll pay a little bit extra so I can convert it in the future if I need to change that instance type. But that's that instance type. Cost savings plans allow you to say, just give me X amount of CPU, X amount of memory in a region, and let me just I'll commit to a set amount of CPU and memory, but let me carve it up how I want. So, but those are much more, on the project. You have to know, is it a project management task that we're going to be, you have to work with the project management team to understand how long those tasks are going to be operating. Is it short-lived? Is it going to be a year-long task before you can make the commitment to the business on those things?
Okay, no, that's great. That's great. So we're about 7 minutes till the top of the hour. So just kind of a reminder, if there's anybody that has some additional questions, obviously, I think most of you looking at the attendee list are people that we work with on a consistent basis. So reach out to any of us or hit us up on ptp.cloud, the website, or you can shoot us a quick question on the Q&A or the chat. So, but I'm going to come to Ethan with a question back to you again, back to cost, and this is really going to hit kind of your business leader, entrepreneurial kind of role, and just kind of describing, as a business leader with a utility like cloud that has, so many different capabilities and services and the opportunity to kind of just do a lot of different things. How do you balance the investment in services that you might want to make as a business leader, and ensure that we're staying on some level of target or budget or plan, and try to find that, how do you work that happy medium between allowing your innovative technical team to really push the envelope while making sure that the CFO stays happy?
Ethan, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I see. I'm the one that did it. Gary's gonna find
Had to be
me
one.
I'll have to ship Gary a Treehouse beer to make up for the mute button.
Two, at least two.
Two. So I think there's two things that we sort of have to balance. One is listening to our customers and seeing what they're learning what they're doing, trying to figure out where their pain points are, and coming back and saying, okay, how can we find solutions to solve these problems? And I think the other piece is that sort of how we started the business off as being born in the cloud is how we have our own opinion, our own thought leadership around how customers are adopting the cloud, why this pivot to the cloud is happening, and helping customers do that. So on one side, we're listening to customers and taking all their feedback. On the other side, for some customers, we're trying to get them to do stuff they don't know they need to do yet. So it's hard to balance those two different things, but we try to figure it out every day. Have really smart people on the team that are having these conversations and can understand what the customer's trying to do and add value to their conversations. At the same time, trying to show customers and prospects, obviously, that, hey, there's other ways to do this. We have an opinion. We have a view about how, you should go about this, and, how we can help you with innovate it by leveraging the cloud. So I think we take those two things every day and figure out how to balance those. Obviously interesting times we're dealing with now from owning and managing a business. We're making decisions every day based on, what we're seeing, what customer trends are, who's moving projects forward, who's put the brakes on stuff, who still has their employees very active and engaged, and then, what customers have, especially our customers that are in retail and a couple other industries that have been in hospitality that have been heavily impacted. So, we're balancing that too, and hopefully this won't last much longer, but if we can get out of this come June, I think we'll be in a good spot, and our customers will be in a good spot. But, it's a constant balancing act. So you're always trying to figure out, where you invest, where you take lead from your customers and what they're doing, and then where you also provide that, that level of direction, thought leadership that, we feel from what our industry experience, what we're seeing going on, and sharing that with our other customers. So, makes the days go by fast. It's keeps us busy. Even though we're stuck, even though I'm stuck in the attic all day, it still makes the day go by. So
that beats the basement.
That basement's cold.
The new HQ. No basements in Texas. Clay soil wouldn't work well. But no, that's great. I think the same things is really, our job is really an enabler in terms of what we're trying to do with the tools that we have and the services that we deliver, and that's letting the innovators innovate and letting the right information get to the right people, but realizing that these dynamic infrastructures require some oversight. And so, we want to be friend to the CIO, and we also want to be friend to the CFO, and provide those enabling services. So anyway, I mean, we were almost exactly right at the top of the hour. I can't say that I thought it that well through, that we would get through most of the questions that I was kind of thinking about in just about an hour, but we did. Don't see anything that we haven't talked about yet coming up on the Q&A. So just want to thank obviously our attendees for their time in participating today, and then obviously the panelists, my colleagues that I enjoy working with so much on an everyday basis. Thank you guys for taking the time out of what you're doing to share a little bit of the information for you. So enjoyed having a beer with you, enjoyed having an opportunity to talk with the attendees, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
Thanks.